The idea of the spiritual has become a very slippery thing these days. It's like motherhood and apple pie. It's hard to say anything against it. If you question anyone else's spirituality, this is seen as in very poor taste. It's often just a word for the touchy-feely part of us, and most people are quite touchy about these aspects of their lives. From our point of view, the good news is that many people today are looking for a fulfilling spiritual side to their lives. The bad news is that many view churches as places where rather old-fashioned and discredited forms of spirituality are still on offer. But there are creative ways of going about this. They don't necessarily look and feel like traditional Christian worship, but they can still be deeply Christian, and they can address the modern openness to the spiritual. Here is an example of Devon people trying to relate to our changed spiritual climate.
In deepest Devon, there are signs of spring in the rural church. Mandy Wright realised that many people found it hard to be part of traditional church, so set up an alternative. Now, Sunday 4/6 meets once a month in the village hall.
Having been deanery evangelist here for just over a year, I realised that the 21 churches in my deanery, their culture is so far removed from anybody who doesn't go to church that I was very worried that if by any chance my evangelism paid off and people wanted to go to church, the traditional churches here would be too much of a leap for them. Our age range at Sunday 4/6 is generally middle-aged and older, but that actually reflects the communities around here. The communities themselves are ageing. Sunday 4/6 is positioned in an extremely isolated rural area, very few children, and the young people that there are generally have to move to town because they can't afford to buy houses here and there isn't enough work for them. Clawton itself is a very small village. It's got no facilities. No pub, no post office, but it has got a church, which is positioned just opposite the village hall where we have Sunday 4/6. I would like to see it develop into church. I don't believe it is yet church, because for me, church is about worship, it's about mission, and it's about community. We've cracked the community aspect really well. Worship, we're experimenting, but the mission aspect is lacking. And until we have that, I don't believe it's church.
We're exploring different avenues of prayer, of worship, and generally looking at all aspects of worship. You know, it's really broadening our horizons, if you like.
There is reverence, there is freedom. People are encouraged, I think, to be strong and actually to try things. Whereas so often out in the countryside you're fed, but you're not always encouraged to take part and see what your gifts are.
The reason they came here initially was for the community aspect, the fellowship, and so I was very keen that they started to actually talk to each other at perhaps a deeper level, that they stayed behind afterwards to drink tea and coffee and mix with each other, and perhaps talk to people they don't know. I mean, the service lasts about an hour, and nowadays the fellowship afterwards lasts about the same amount of time, so it sort of runs for 2 hours. We meet in the village hall because, firstly, it's accessible, both physically accessible. We have a few disabled people who come, who find it difficult to get into the churches. Secondly, it's accessible because it's not a church, so those people who don't go to church find it a lot less frightening to come into a village hall than a church. I wanted right from the beginning to make it clear that it was open to any denomination and none. But as we went on, I spend quite a lot of my time doing talks to secular groups, and I personally would like to see non-churchgoers coming. But I'm also very clear that I will not and cannot impose a vision on the group who are here. They've formed really well now, and it's up to them really which direction we take. If I'd started it again, I would have started it a lot further back for people who don't go to church at all. As far as actually running it, money-wise, it's not a huge problem. We always have a bowl at the door and people put money in as and when they can. Apart from my stipend, we are self-sufficient as far as that's concerned. I'm hoping that in the future, in the near future, we will start forming small groups, midweek small groups, feeding out of Sunday 4/6 with the same ethos of participation, of respect for each other's views and beliefs, and of fun, because fun is an important part of Sunday 4/6.
This is not compatible with praising and glorifying.
Particularly for the people who don't go to church or who used to go to church and who no longer go, they are finding this to be a very different experience than what they expected, and I believe that they are meeting God through this experience in a less judgmental, less frightening way than if they went into a traditional church.